So having appreciated the chronology that you start from application software, system software, and then the hardware. Now, today we want to appreciate computer hardware to mean the tangible parts of a computer, or what we say, the tangible components. In the other class, we talked about input device. Input devices are actually hardware which are used to key in or enter data into a computer. The other one is output devices. These are devices which are used to display. When we are talking about printers, monitors in the other units on output devices, those ones entail computer hardware because you can touch and you can see. There's also secondary storage devices like hard disks, compact discs, DVDs, which you know, those ones are also components which are tangible and they are part of what we would refer as computer hardware. There is also internal components such as the CPU, the motherboards, and the RAM. I'm interested to talk about the motherboard since we have covered input devices, the output devices, and also we have talked about memories. So we must have covered on secondary storage hardware. So the CPU is a single docking point where all the components of a computer get attached so that we have a diagrammatic representation like that. This is the computer motherboard in that regard. So inside the CPU, we have something known as a motherboard. You can see these two straight lines here makes what we would refer as the RAM chips. This is where your RAM slots are, and this is where you put your RAM. There are many others, expansion slots. We have the fan and the others. We have the USB drives. So all these are actually parts of what makes a computer motherboard. So for the interest of this class, you need to get on understand the features of a motherboard. Most importantly, also understanding that motherboards come from different manufacturers. So motherboards coming from manufacturers needs to be compliant with components so that you realize that motherboard, for example, from IBM might not be exactly fitting into motherboards from ASUS. And many, we have a number of manufacturers here: Intel, ASUS, AOPEN, Abit, BioStar, MSI, and Gigabyte. These ones are examples of popular manufacturers of this motherboard. And you realize that the components that are in the motherboard need to be compliant with the manufacturers. For example, the RAM chips. The RAM chips, most of the time, might not be exactly similar, so that it might not fit to these particular slots, considering that these RAM chips are coming from different manufacturers. So they need to be compliant to the manufacturer. And then again, normally these CPUs support single type of CPUs and few types of memories. Any motherboard must be supporting some a number of a single type of CPU and maybe a number of memories. There's also support for video cards, hard disk, sound cards. Now, motherboard cases and power supplies must be compatible to work properly. And I say that normally these motherboards is dependent on the company manufacturing the motherboard. So that's why we are saying the cases and the power supply must be compatible, so that you realize that from different manufacturers, it might not be similar. So normally this motherboard is mounted inside the case, as we have said. When we talk about the CPU itself, inside it has the motherboard. So it is attached via small screws, normally in a through pre-drill holes. So motherboard connects or contains ports to connect all of internal components. That's where I can attach my mouse. That's where I can attach my display, or what we say monitors. So it provides single socket for CPU, where for memory, normally one or more slots are available. Remember, we just saw here the RAM slots, 1, 2, depending on When you are buying, normally it comes maybe with 1 RAM chip, but you might be, sometimes you might want more to expand your machine so that you have more power. Then you add the RAM chips or RAM. You make sure you expand the RAM size. Maybe it was coming with 4 GB, then you can add another RAM chip or 4 GB to make it 8 GB. So that's very important about the motherboard. So having covered on the motherboards, I would want us to appreciate a little bit on the memory units. Unless there's a question first. Yes, class. Are we still together?
Yes.
Okay, so I want us to get into this memory unit. It's an extension of what we covered in memories, but it's just good to appreciate the memory unit so that we can continue to ports. Now, the amount of data that can be stored in a storage unit is what we refer as memory unit. So actually, that is what dictates the storage capacity of a memory device, such as a flash disk, memory cards, and the others. So the units, these ones are the low storage units. We normally separate the storage sizes in terms of low storage units and high storage units. So the low storage unit is actually the lowest representation of data in a storage device. So a bit is actually logical 0 or 1. Remember I said in the other class that computers understand only 0 and 1. Data in a computer is actually stored in a hard disk. It's actually a string or a combination of ones and zeros once it is seated in a hard disk. So when I say bit is a binary digit, which is actually 0 and 1, understand that the way data is represented at the lowest level is in form of zeros and ones. Even if you are keying in your keyboard, like you're typing a Word document, that Word document at the end of the day will be actually stored in the hard disk as a combination of ones and zeros. There is something known as a nibble, which is actually a combination of 4 bits. 4 bits forms what we say a nibble. Byte is a group of 8 bits. Remember I said bits are ones and zeros. So understand when I say a nibble is 4 bits, it's actually a combination of zeros and ones. There is also a byte, which is a group of 8 bits. A word, a computer word is a combination of bits which can be, we would always say the length of a computer word, which normally is word size or word length, and it may be as small as 8 bits or long as 96 bits. So anything ranging from 8 to 96 bits forms something known as a computer word, or what we say word size. So I hope we have understood from bit, which is 1 or 0, nibble, which is actually a group of 4 bits, then byte, which is 8 bits, word, which is 8 to 96. Now, high storage units on the other hand, you might even have seen from this drawing of a flash disk or flash drive. This is 4 GB. You see, these ones are represented in high storage units. That's when we talk about now KBs, MBs, GBs, terabytes, and even petabytes. So 1 kilobyte is, and I must have come across 1024 before. And I said, this is one of the standards that they use in memories. And we must have done some computation based on that. But I just want to tell you that that's why when you purchase in a shop, if you go and purchase a 4 GB or a 2 GB hard drive, or I can say a flash disk or flash drive, if it is 2 GB, is it exactly 2 GB? You realize that it is not making exactly to 2 GB. It is less by some, it's 1 point something. It's because of actually these units or 1024, so that 1 KB is cost 1024. You need to get this one for purposes of conversions. You will be given number conversions, I know, or you might come at a situation where you want to convert. For example, you are told to convert 1 GB to MBs. Then it means that you need to know the conversions. So for example, 1 GB is 1024 MBs. 1 TB or terabyte is 1024 GBs. 1 petabyte PP is 1024 terabytes. I don't know how the computers in markets nowadays actually are being sold up to 1 terabyte hard disk. I don't know whether you have come across one which is actually to a storage unit of petabytes. I know majority of our machines that we are normally using are actually represented in form of GBs or gigabits. So we have terabytes and petabytes. So just understand this one so that you can use for number conversions. So this takes me to something known as ports. Ports, and as the name suggests, that's like a port that you know, the docking point, where normally you dock the ship at the coastline. It's the same thing that has been brought to computers. But normally now, when we talk about port in computers, it can be a physical docking point from which external device get attached to a computer. How do external device get attached to a computer? Just like the same analogy using the ships when they dock at coastline. It's the same thing. So that is where you now offload the goods that are being brought inside. So it's the same thing in computing to say that it's a physical docking point using which external device can get attached to a computer. That is where you attach a mouse. That is where you attach a monitor, a keyboard. It must get attached to a computer through a port. These ports can also be programmatic docking points through which information flows from a computer to a computer or over the internet. Sometimes these ports can be programmatic. Like when we talk about TCP port, Transmission Control Protocol, we have also HTTP ports, which I would regard those ones as programmatic docking points. The characteristics of these ports is that external device connect to a computer, which you have agreed, and normally it gets attached to a computer using cables, or sometimes near-field communication such as Bluetooth or any other methodology, like when you are using a wireless mouse. So examples of external device attached to my ports are mouse, keyboard, monitors, microphones, and even speakers, and many others. So these ones are visual representation showing you some of the common ports that we have in a computer. The USB, Universal Serial Bus. There is also serial board, display port, you see, VGA, HDMI, many others. Parallel, many others. These ones are examples of ports that we have in computer. Now, let's talk about these ports very quickly. A serial port is used for external modems and all the computer mouse. This is the serial port, the one which is rounded. It's normally not, I think it's not supported in the modern day computers because of challenges of pins. You realize that these ports add pins so that if there is a damage or if you are careless when you are connecting your mouse through this serial port, you can easily damage the pin. And that was one of the key drawbacks about these kind of serial ports. It came in two versions, 9-pin and 25-pin model. Normally, in this serial port, data travels at 115 KB per second. So, and I want you to, when I discuss the ports, you should be able to know the speed at which data travels or representation of those particular ports in terms of pins or connection points. So parallel port used for scanners and printers, sometimes known as printer port, and it's a 25-pin model, also known as IEEE 1284 compliant centronic port. Want to talk about this IEEE? IEEE is Institute of Electric and Electronic Engineering. It is one of the bodies which govern these electronic components and even devices. So that you realize that there is also, I think the latest one was compliance on chargers. The mobile phone chargers are required that they should be able to be having one charging standard all across the mobile phones. That is actually dictated by IEEE, so that we are able to reduce what we would term as e-waste or electronic waste. So that if you lose your mobile device, you can still utilize the same chargers in other devices. So parallel port is known as IEEE 1284 compliant centronics port, which is a standard guiding that parallel port. So even if another manufacturer would want to come up with a parallel port or want to have a parallel port within their PCs, then they need to be compliant with IEEE 1284 as a standard defined for those particular devices. We have PS2 port used for old computer keyboards and mouses, sometimes known as also mouse port. So this is used for old computers. There is this one very popular, Universal Serial Bus, which you're normally using. It was introduced in 1997. And any computer today being manufactured normally comes with at minimum, at the lowest, 2 USB ports. And data travels at 12 megabits per second in these ports. USB compliant device can get power from a USB port, which you can agree. I can charge my phone using my PC. Is that agreed? Which means that USB compliant devices can get power from a USB port. There is also a VGA board, which connects monitors to a computer video cards. It has 15 volts. So this VGA or serial port connector, similar to a serial port connector, but serial port has pins. So you can be able to separate the VGA and serial port connector in that VGA has alls, the other one serial, that is VGA as alls, serial as pins. It's very important. There is also power connector, which you know that one, the one which you use for sourcing electricity, that is 3-prong plug, which is normally known as power connector. Another very important device you need to take note is FireWire port. These ones are normally coming in with Apple machines. It is a very innovative technology coming in from Apple, which allows data to travel from 400 to 800 megabits per second, very high speed. That explains why if you go to a broadcasting house or where data is required to travel very fast, delay is not allowed. You realize that even the machines that are used there are actually Apple machines. So this FireWire port makes Apple machines be able to relay data at very high speeds. So 3 variants comes in from this FireWire port: 4-pin FireWire 400 connector, 6-pin 400 connector, 9-pin 800 connector. So you can realize this is the port which has the highest speed in terms of data transfer, of 400 to 800 megabits. There is also modem port, which is used to connect your computer to a telephone network. You know modems, that comes from Safaricom or Airtel. You normally, but you must have come across. So normally this is used to connect your computer to a telephone network. There's also Ethernet port, which you know. This Ethernet is the one which you normally plug in to be able to get internet. If you go, for example, to your lab and you want your computer to connect to the internet, you normally use an Ethernet cable, which connects to Ethernet port. What's happening? You see, Solomon Kimba, this is not someone who is in class. I have to mute that. So I was talking about Ethernet, and I said that is where we source our internet. Normally, it is having this Ethernet port comes in with a RJ45 connector. The ones which you normally plug or get attached to your machine is actually RJ45 connector. So it attaches itself to the Ethernet port. That is where you connect to the internet. There is also game port, DVI, sockets, and many, many others. So that's a little bit about hardware. We have covered software. There's a very, very important class that is number system. I don't want to touch that. Okay.